Good evening, everyone. Let's get started then. This is a special general meeting of the Dons Trust. And the agenda for the meeting is solely about the super restricted actions resolution and vote. And first I'd like to have some apologies from the DT members who can't be here tonight. James McDonald station is underwater in Northampton, and Graham Price and Kevin Rye both can't make it tonight to the meeting, and I hope we'll be watching most of the meeting online. Thanks for coming. I know this has been a long process of votes and meetings recently, and we're also not done because we have our AGM coming up next month, so we've got another exciting meeting to look forward to then, which I hope you'll all join me for, and I'll try and wear something festive at that meeting perhaps to make it a little bit less boring. George is going to tell us a bit about the votes, and then we're going to go on to talk about the resolutions, and then we'll go on to any other business. So, George.
Thank you. So, just to let everyone know where we are in terms of proxies, obviously the turnout requirement for this vote to pass is just over 3,100. I can confirm we've had 1,436 online proxies, 10 paper proxies, and we've had 92 people to register online, so that is 1,538. And there's not 1,000 people in the room, so we mechanically will still have that vote, we'll still have that discussion, but the vote will fail on turnout. So I'll go back to Angus.
Just checking, anyone hiding around the corners? 1,000 people? No? Okay. So if there are any questions specifically about the super restricted actions resolution, then we can take them now. If anyone has them, I think we've exercised this topic quite a lot, so probably everyone understands and has made their views known on it. If there aren't questions, we'll go straight on to have the vote in the room. But if there are questions, I'd be happy to take them. One from David. David, hello.
Rick, Mike, just wait for the microphone. David
Rick, Cox,
at the front.
David Cox at the front.
Thank you. Sorry, this is the second of the two meetings, isn't it?
Yeah.
So what was the vote on the first meeting, on the first?
That's a good question.
I will just get up the exact number for you so I get it 100%. Are you looking for the 50.01 or the super restricted action?
Both would be good.
Okay. So on 50.01, we had a turnout of 3,697, which was 58.45% of our membership. Of those, 71.17% were in favour of the restricted action, which fell short of the 75% threshold, which is why 50.01 didn't progress to the second vote. This one, the super restricted action, had a turnout of 3,704, which was 58.56% of our membership, with 87.96% of those votes in favour, which is why we've progressed to this second meeting and the second vote.
So the first vote was done on a poll basis.
Yeah.
And this vote isn't done on a poll basis?
Yeah, that's correct. Andrea advised the board that the second vote couldn't be done by a poll. She felt it had to be done via proxies because of the requirements for a meeting for the thresholds to be met in terms of turnout. Because of the way our constitution's worded, she felt that was the only way to do it. And that's where we are now.
Okay.
Thanks, David. There was another question at the back. I think it was Eric. No? Oh, sorry, Eric. Yeah, so you had your hand up. Anyone else? All right, let's go to the vote in the room then, please, for the super restricted actions. I appreciate this is a paper exercise in many ways, but we have to have the vote in the room to follow the process that we have. So would all those who are in favour of the super restricted action to increase the protections for our club, as detailed in the papers, raise their blue cards, please. Who's counting?
Mark?
Come in, I can. 3, 4, 5.
Thank you. All those against?
What was that, James?
1, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13.
And any abstentions?
Correct.
Thank you very much. That concludes the voting process, and as George has already said, because of the factors required to pass this vote, it hasn't proceeded. So we can now move on to any other business, and I'm sure people have questions for us, and I'd be happy to take them. So fire away. Hands up, anyone? And if there are no questions, we might all just adjourn to the bar. Peter, hello.
Why am I always the first?
No question.
You don't know how many people ask that question.
I think I said at the last meeting that I was not...
Yeah, it's not making much noise.
I was not wholeheartedly against 50+1 or the other resolution. Has the board reflected on, because you were obviously in favour of it and devoted a lot of time to it, have you yet had an opportunity to reflect on why the resolutions failed and whether you plan to bring them forward perhaps in a different way, in a way that might appeal to a majority that would see it through? An issue that I think most people know I'm concerned about, that there are not enough protections yet in place to protect the Cherry Red Record Stadium in terms of borrowing against the freehold. It's an issue I've raised before, and people on this board have assured me that there are. I believe there aren't. Are you going to reflect on that? How might you be taking it forward in the future? Because I'm not wholeheartedly against this.
I understand.
Don't believe the protections are there.
So I think James and Alex both want to speak on this. So
Yeah, in terms of reflection, we haven't had a chance to yet because the vote only closed last week and we haven't had a board meeting then. What we're doing is the Secretariat team are doing some analysis on the votes, kind of how the votes split, how the votes over time, that kind of thing, so we can learn as much as we can about how the membership voted. And I think that what I'd really like to do is do more surveys and more engagement and kind of include, broaden out that conversation. I think there's a really, it's been interesting, kind of a little bit like losing an election campaign, isn't it? You go back to the members and, kind of in the constituency and kind of reflect on that. And we definitely, kind of everybody needs to do that, I think. But for the board, that's really important as well. And I think there is a really, there's a massive opportunity for us all to learn from this. I think and I know not everyone agrees with me, but in terms of the volume of turnout and across our membership, the level of engagement, I was really, really impressed with. I think there is more to do to reach more of our membership, and there's lots of lessons to learn, but I don't want to second guess those until we've looked at the numbers and found out what the data tells us, and gone out and talked to people as well. And I think there's a really, this is one of the first votes we've done of this scale with the opportunity to have the data that we have to learn from it. So I think there's a really good opportunity. In terms of bringing it back, that's not that's for the future board to decide. And I can't kind of, it's not for any of us really to second guess that. I think from what I'm hearing, certainly, and from what, the way the numbers stack up, both in terms of the votes and our financial picture, I imagine this vote will come back to the membership at some point in the future. Now, but that's not my decision, obviously.
And just to stress...
Sorry, can I add to that before you come back? Obviously, you'll come back again. I was having a discussion, we both posted on this with Jane earlier on Pro Boards about what the turnout meant. I was really impressed with the turnout, and I think Jane came back and said that as well. As to some people are saying it's the 71.19%, others are saying it's 41 of the overall membership. I, like James, I was really impressed by the number of people who voted, particularly given we have a huge number of new members this year. I think that it was a very positive experience, but at the same time we're all agreed that by the rules of this organisation it didn't pass, so nobody's pretending that we should be looking at anything other than this as being a vote that did not pass. As James said, this board hasn't met, this board is not going to be bringing this back, a future board might well. I think the first stage in reflecting on anything like this is to listen to what is being said. Now, obviously, we can see online a lot more about what is being said about what happened, where people think it went wrong, what people, maybe like yourself, who said you're not wholly against it, but you would have liked X or Y in order to convince you to vote in favour of it. There are a number of people who have said that, and that's something that we've got to listen to. There are other people who haven't engaged. I want to hear more from them. So I think the next board, if they want to take this forward, and I suspect that it's likely that something along these lines will be brought back, they're going to have to look at what has been said online, who didn't vote, why they didn't vote, and come back and say, if we were to move in this direction, would you feel more confident in voting in favour of it? As with any organisation, I don't think we're ever going to get 100% in favour of anything. There are going to be people who, for very reasonable, decent reasons, are not going to vote in favour of something. That's absolutely fine. We've still got to listen to them. But accepting that some people won't vote in favour of it, I think that you've got to listen to the people who genuinely are open-minded but want more information, find out what that information is, get that information to them and hopefully convince them. But as I said, not everybody's going to vote in favour of anything. But if a future board wants to bring this back, that's the process I think they need to go through in order to convince people that it's the right idea.
Thank you. I just hope that those members of the board who are going to continue to serve will reflect, because several of them made this point quite emphatically to me and to meetings, that there are sufficient protections in place. Clearly, they might believe that, but they weren't. That was one of the reasons why you didn't get the vote through. So I hope those people who are going to stay on the DTB will reflect on that. And I also hope that whoever the new DTB board are represented by won't look on those people who were so emphatic about criticising certain resolutions, will not be looked on as rebels or the enemy or the opposition. We all care passionately about this club. We have a right to have a different view, and we have a right to be heard. And I hope you'll reflect on that as well.
We definitely will, and I've been making the point at almost every meeting since we started this process that it's not us and them, it's not win or lose, it's not others and othering of people or anything like that. It is simply a process of communicating, engaging and explaining to our membership where we are. And I think from that perspective we can say that the vote's been a terrific success process, because we've got this issue out in front of everybody before Christmas this year, and we haven't waited until a cliff edge is upon us before starting to talk about this stuff with people. And I hope we can continue to do that going forward. But again, as others have said, that's for the board that comes out of the next election process to think about and determine. Yes, sir. Question. Yeah.
Sorry, my name is Dominic Proctor. I'm a candidate. I completely agree with Alex about the need to listen further, but I would be cautious about doing all the listening through the through the chat lines. It's really, I'm kind of new to this, so forgive me if I'm wrong, but I don't get the impression that it's a representative sample of the fans.
Absolutely, and I apologise if I gave that impression. It certainly is one of the ways of listening to people. It's perhaps the most convenient when you're sitting at home or sitting on a train, but it's not even the most important. That's why we have the representation at the kiosk every home match. That's why we need to have more engagement in SGMs. That's why we need to have engagement through surveys. That's why we need to have these open-ended questions to our fans, to our members, to say, this is an idea we're looking to explore. This isn't a definite proposal. This is an idea we're looking to explore. How would you? What are your feelings on this? How would we structure it? If you're opposed, you're opposed. If you're in favour, you're in favour. What's going to convince those people in the middle? What sort of reassurances, to use Peter's phrase, are you going to require? So, and there's a huge amount that we personally, I don't think we're doing well enough as a club. I don't think many organisations are doing well enough. It's not just the Dons Trust, in order to make sure that we're fully engaging with our membership, with our fans. So no, it's not just Pro Boards, it's not just WAP, it's not just Facebook, it's not just anything. It's the whole amelioration of all these, conglomeration of all these different things. So I would encourage any members, particularly those who are watching online through this thing at the moment, because you're all wonderful people, but there aren't huge numbers of you here. Come and talk to us on match days. Come and have your feelings, your thoughts heard. And the more views we can take on board, the better the resolution we're going to propose, or that is going to be proposed at any stage in the future.
Thanks, Alex. Any other questions? David, you've got another question? Yeah. And then we'll come to Jane.
I just it's a process question really more than anything else. So if I understood correctly, we're saying 3,000 plus people took the time to vote on a issue, knowing that they had to vote a second time for it to be approved, but only 50 could be bothered to turn up out of that 3,000.
Yeah.
Are we clear that the 3,000 that voted understood that it wasn't a poll vote and that they couldn't vote online afterwards? Because I find those numbers quite extraordinary, if I'm being honest. I mean, I'm not really bothered which way people vote, although I have an opinion, but it's a huge difference that 3,000 plus people take the time to read the information and take a decision and cast a vote, and then 50 people turn up in a room to what is the validatory vote. I'm not clear that they didn't understand the process correctly. I'm really sorry, but I think they didn't, is the truth of the matter.
Just to be clear, we've had, over 1,500 proxies for tonight's meeting as well, so it's more than just the 50 people in the room. In terms of comms, I'll leave that to...
But it is still a huge difference between those that voted.
You're right, it's half a drop-off, I get that, yeah.
Whether, we don't know whether everyone understands everything in our processes, obviously. I think our processes are quite Byzantine, kind of particularly when it comes to this vote. If you can put a qualifier on Byzantine, I'm not sure. But kind of like this process particularly is difficult for a reason, right? Because the stuff that we would want to change through this process, they're big decisions and they're difficult. But the nature of the way these votes are structured is really awkward, isn't it, frankly? Kind of doing a poll vote, then it having to be a vote in a meeting, and the gaps in time between the votes and stuff like that. Now, kind of we took the advice to structure the votes that we did, and it was, kind of good advice, and that's how, to follow the Constitution in the way that we did. There's potentially a different interpretation, kind of in how we structured that, and so I think if a board in the future brings it back, there's some more fluidity there. I think as well we're caught in that bit where, if you look back on the, kind of some of the previous campaigns we've done, like back in 2 ticks, where you were able to post stuff out to people because there was fewer people and you could post it, and nearly everyone there was was coming to Kings Meadow anyway. So you could do things in a different way, and that was how people were voted. Now we're online. Kind of, I would like to see, it would be much better for me personally, kind of as a member, that the votes happen in the same way, and they should probably, the logic is that they both be poll votes, but the interpretation of the Constitution is that can't happen. So hopefully for future boards we can really look at our rules, really understand them, and if this vote comes back, or if there's any restricted action votes in the future that need the confirmation meeting, we can do it in a much kind of easier and more transparent way with a bit more time as well, I think, which is really important. But I would say that, kind of the second vote had whatever it is, nearly 1,500 people, kind of submit their proxy. So that, which isn't a bad turnout normally for what we do, okay? But it's not the same number as the first one.
And to be clear, the legal advice you got prohibits the chair from making this a poll vote.
Yes.
Specifically.
So the Constitution says, without going into it, the Constitution says,
a confirmatory meeting,
so it has to be, and the turnout threshold on the second vote is about people who, and I'm not a constitutional expert, so I'm going to be in dangerous territory, but the rules for the second vote are about kind of the number of people in the meeting, by in person, online, or by proxy. So it is the language around that second vote is different. But I think, the heart of your question is, do members understand how we do our votes? Some understand them perfectly, some don't understand them at all. Let's get more people into that camp than this camp. And kind of, is there potentially a better way of structuring this vote in the future? Probably.
Jane, I think you had the next question.
Thank you. So yes, I do think 58.45% is a really good turnout. I am going to say it out loud again, I would guard against using the 71% all the time, because that does give the impression that 71% of the membership voted for this, and that is not the case. So when you use 71%, I would just guard against using it out of context. I think I've heard you want us to come to you with, come and talk to us, tell us why, have a look at the analysis. I think it's really, really important you go out and talk to people as well, because I think there are lots of people with different views about why they haven't voted and their reasons why. And I think it's really good to get under the skin of that and understand why that has been. Picking up on David's point on the second round of voting and why people haven't engaged, it was presented as two things that were codependent on each other to a certain extent. And from conversations I've had with people, and again, it was only a small minority, but worth taking into account, is that once the first one didn't get through, the second one didn't stand up on its own. And so putting the two votes together, I think, had an impact on the way that people voted. We know that 1,500 people have voted, but we don't know how they voted. So people who voted in the first round might have changed their vote for the second time. So I think until all that data has been gone through and looked at, I think we should avoid trying to assume what that might be telling us. I think if this comes, you talked about back in 2 ticks as being a comparable. There is no reason why the board couldn't have mailed stuff out. It's expensive. I get that. Yeah. It was expensive when we did it before. But I think, as well as looking at the voting results, look at the kind of landscape that you're working in at the moment. You've got a whole load of new members who I think I put on pro boards earlier. My poor dad, he has been given membership as part of being a season ticket holder. He has actively not been a member before this year, and at one point said to me, I'm just deleting the emails, I'm getting completely swamped with them. Now I get that he's an 86-year-old man, does not understand the structure of the club, has no interest in it, but that's his kind of first engagement with the trust, and is somewhat put off by the number of emails and stuff. So you just need to think about the different audiences that you're aiming at, and maybe maybe he should be opting out and getting papers. I don't know, but
yeah, and I think there's like I say, there's loads to learn both from those who voted, those who didn't voted. I'm going to do have got thoughts on doing a review for the next board on kind of the experience of what we learned from kind of running that vote, both and the marketing and the comms we did, because we tried some new things and we did some tried and tested things, and there was some other stuff we could do, like posting out. We decided we didn't feel it was the right vote to spend that money on, kind of thing. Now that might be a wrong decision. It might not be, kind of like that. But I think that's an interesting thing. In terms of as a comms and marketing person, like I'd love to segment our audience and kind of segment it by age demographics and kind of really run a kind of 365 multi-channel campaign, but that requires a comms and marketing team with perfect data and kind of that kind of stuff, which we the Dons Trust is never going to have in that way. But I think there are tons of lessons to be learned, both for me personally and for the board and as us as an institution. So I think that kind of I'm well up for learning them and passing those learnings on to the future board as well.
Yeah, and I think if there's some feedback to members as well, because clearly you're going to want, if it is coming back, then you're going to want to engage with them and get them to understand. I think there's a gap in particularly the new members in understanding their responsibilities as a member in being required to vote at various points.
Yeah, 100%. And it's been a busy time for members as well, and kind of it's been a busy time for all of us. And I think the reality is we're not discussing 50+1 today for want of 150 votes. Another 3,500 people voting, kind of. So there's tons of lessons to be learned, and I think there'll be really interesting lessons for all sorts of future things. But the headline for me is that turnout of a really broad range of people it's going to look like, I think, is really impressive for the institution. Kind of for the membership organisation we are, that turnout level is really good. Kind of, and I think we should all be. It could be better. I hope it will be better in the future. But for me, that's a massive win for us, for all of us. And actually, just finally, not to dominate on that, I'm really, really pleased, and thanks to everyone in this room, everyone online, and everyone who's participated, I saw very little divisiveness through that process as well. Kind of, we've had issues in the past that have really split the fan base and been really divisive. This one didn't do that, and it had the potential it could do, because it's a really emotive, heated topic for everyone. So, kind of, I was really pleased that didn't happen.
Can I just add to that about the point that Jane made about the need to go out and talk to people? Yes, absolutely. I think that because this board in its current format is reaching the end of its term, listening to what is said at the moment is the right course. The new board will want to go out and actively talk to people. That's not going to be ignored. So please be reassured about that aspect.
Thanks, Alex. We'll take a question from online, from our online participants. Hello, all of you online participants. Thank you for being here.
The first online question is from Sam Spencer. He says, has expanding the membership of the Dons Trust to season ticket holders affected the turnout today? Do we have a breakdown of the people who declined to participate based on when they became members? So I think I'm probably the best place to answer that. In terms of the breakdown, me and Reese, who's our new assistant secretary, are working on a piece of analysis that will include looking at age demographics, looking at when people became members, and trying to get all of that data together to work out if there are any patterns to when people have voted, how they voted, and why they didn't participate. In terms of season ticket holders affecting today's turnout, we don't have that data. I doubt we'll ever get that data, but we'll look into it if we can.
Thanks, George. Is there another question online? Or?
No, that's it for now.
Okay, question at the back there.
Hello, Alex Pugh here. I just wanted to ask if any thought had been given to next season's membership model, whereby we revert to a model where people who actively wish to take part or become members of the Dons Trust do so consciously, rather than it being packaged with your season ticket. Obviously, we're asking people who don't buy a season ticket to pay £50 to become a member, but presumably a much larger number of people get their membership now with their season ticket. And I personally think that affects the way that people vote and the way that people get involved in the club. I just wondered if it had been given any thought.
Well, we certainly always want to continually improve our membership and season ticket offerings. That much I'd say, and only James can give you some more.
Yeah, in terms of one of the things I really want to learn in this voting analysis we're talking about is to work out, is that engagement split right? How many of our newer members voted versus how many of our older members voted? And I think until we know that data, we can't really make too many assumptions. When we've done surveys with members from last season and members that have joined this season, the response rates are pretty similar. So I think there's a job of work to do in engaging all sorts of, in all of our members, whether they've come through a season ticket route or they've been members since, since day one or however long they've joined us. But I think ultimately the decision on that is for the future board working with the club to decide. So I think, none of us can really say what that decision will be. For what it's worth, I think that if you've committed to a season ticket, then you should have a say in the future of our club, personally. And I think the more people we bring along on the journey with us, the better. But we've got to do that comms, we've got to do more communication, we've got to get more people in, we've got to find ways of reaching those people, we've got to get out to them, however we can do that.
Thanks, James. Any more questions from the room? Roger?
Yeah, good evening, everyone. Roger Hopkinson. My opinion, observation, the story that's been told about why we're doing these votes has been really poor. You mentioned 2 ticks 9-10 years ago. That was a lot clearer. Now, it was an easier, perhaps, ask, but you've got a huge story to tell. There was a strategy document that hit my inbox. I think the timing of that was very strange, and whether or not that strategy told a strong enough story that flowed into why we need to do the votes, I think that's open to a big debate, but you've got to tell a stronger story to take people with you. Look at what the guys did 9-10 years ago. Yes, there was risks there, just as there's risks now, but the next board has to do better in telling a stronger story.
Thanks. I think on the specific point on the strategy document, it was published as quickly as we had it approved by all of the groups that needed to approve it, and were able to create a summary of it that stood up and made sense and could be tracked back to the main document. But that was as fast as it could be done. I appreciate that wasn't ideal, and we could have done with having that out earlier in the year, to be honest.
When did the strategy start? When did you start the strategy, please?
The document started, I'm going to say, in the summer, but the work on the strategy started towards the beginning of the year, and if not before that.
Okay. I think there was a simpler strategy, a much clearer one. There was lots of words, lots of buzzwords, but the clarity and clear direction that the club should be going in, that you want us to go in, was lacking.
It's important feedback, Roger. Thank you.
I think Eric was next.
Eric at the back next, and then over to you.
Thank you, Eric Samuelson. Just any other business, so I'm going to ask you a different sort of question. The results were published recently, last few days, and they're quite disturbing. And a couple of thoughts about that. It continues to be impressive how well the Academy has done. With, I think it's 3.3 million of income from Academy sales. So it's quite depressing to find that the last half dozen games there hasn't been a single Academy player in the team, starting in the team. And I wonder to what extent the Dons Trust Board gets involved in the strategy for that set by the PLC, because I think the Dons Trust Board has an oversight role here. And the second question about oversight, I would like you to tell me, please, to what extent what your procedures are in reviewing the budget for the forthcoming year, please. The one they're already in.
So I didn't quite hear the second one, Eric. I'm so sorry.
I'm interested in what procedures the board goes through in reviewing the PLC, the football club strategy for budget for whatever year is about to be launched. So the one we're in now, what was done, to what extent does the Dons Trust Board get involved, to what influence in practice do you have? And I'm asking the Dons Trust Board. I want the board members to answer that, please.
Okay, I mean, I can answer the first one. There is a metric for having academy players in the team that is tracked, isn't there? That we do that exists. So across the season, there is a goal to have our academy players showcased in our first team, because that's where we have our shop window effectively to show those people to the rest of the world. I don't know whether we've failed to achieve that or not, but we can certainly track it and look at it. And on the second question, which was...
I'm interested in what extent the Dons Trust Board got involved in reviewing the budget for the year that we're in.
In reviewing the budget for the year ahead?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm possibly not the best person to answer that. And someone else likes to
you are
try
the chair, Angus.
I am, but I'm not a finance guy at all. So,
okay.
Looking at our treasurer.
I have a further point I'd like to make.
Michelle can answer. Thanks.
Well, no, the point I was making, Michelle, was I don't want to ask someone who's on the PLC. I want to ask that.
Michelle's not here as part of the PLC. She's our treasurer tonight.
But she's not a member of the Dons Trust Board, and I wanted the Dons Trust Board members to answer that, because I want to know what you do.
I'm going to start off by copping out and saying I only joined the Dons Trust Board in the summer and therefore wasn't involved. I'm going to pass the mic down.
Very kind of you. To the best of my recollections, and this isn't a very strong one, and I'm definitely not a finance person either, we received the budget to oversee and approve at the end, so to speak, rather than looking at it at this particular point. Sorry. My understanding, my recollection, and it is a dim and distant one in this particular regard, is that the budget comes when it's been, so to speak, virtually finalised, rather than actually being something that we work on specifically. We do obviously get regular financial updates, as somebody asked me about at the last meeting. But other than that, I honestly don't recall seeing things on a regular, or seeing the budget well in advance to be able to tweak and assess and ask questions about. Somebody else can quite happily contradict me if they can remember more than I can.
Yeah, we get, so this was my first experience of it. I joined the board in April. So this summer was the first time I'd seen the budget as it came through. So we get the budget from the PLC. I think my recollection is about 3 or 4 different iterations of it over the summer to review. And, kind of we get the PLC minutes that come through where they've discussed the budget, it gets signed off there, and then it comes to the board for approval. Now we have a chance to, through our PLC reps, to shape the conversation that happens around the budget before it gets signed off. It's a discussion between, those and the board, from what I remember, and and then ultimately it's for us to agree and sign off.
I don't want to make this just a conversation between us. Okay, thank you. Just one last point I'd like to make, which is a request. It's not a question. When we started a long time ago, we used to publish quarterly accounts. And given the importance of the financial accounts right now, and the need for people who are going to be voting possibly again on 50% plus 1, I'd like to ask the Dons Trust Board to consider asking the PLC to resume that practice. And I know that we stopped doing it while I was CEO, so I recognise I'm subject to criticism for that. But we stopped doing it because there didn't seem to be much interest. I believe there'll be quite a bit of interest now.
Noted. I'll revert, Eric, about that. We have another question online.
Thank you. This is from Gary Davis. He says, with a contested election upcoming and 2 or 3 current members standing down, he is interested to know how the process for handover to the new board so they can get up and running quickly.
I can start to take that. We've got a handover checklist, if you like, for it's kind of a grand term for what it is, of all the things that are being undertaken by board members who are standing down. And it's our plan to have a review of that handover list with all of those individual board members before they step away. I mean, they're stepping away, they're not going to Siberia, so there is the opportunity for the new board members to meet the person who did the work on the area that they take over from. We'll also, after the elections are announced for the next board meeting in December, we'll invite the successful candidates to attend that board meeting as observers, and start to get involved straight away in understanding how the board meeting runs, and to be able to contribute to that meeting as observers. They won't really be board members until January, and at that point we'll start a process of education for the new board members. I know that the Secretariat is working on an onboarding set of exercises or work with the new board members to have them understand all of the responsibilities and facets of the trust, which take quite a while to get your head around and to get to grips with, and the interplay between the different bits of the organisation. That's it. Any more questions? A few more.
I seem to have the
man with the mic.
I seem to have the microphone at the moment. My name's Ian Robinson. Like Don, I'm also a candidate in the upcoming election. I didn't want to prolong the debate that we were having earlier unnecessarily. I just thought it was worth picking up on a couple of points that people have made, specifically in relation to the 50.01. 6 months ago, if you'd asked me, I probably would have said to myself, yeah, I can see myself voting in favour of 50.01, because I see the benefit of inward investment, particularly in terms of things like paying down the debt. In the event, well, provided obviously that the ownership of the club's protected, which fingers crossed it would have been under 50.01. But in the event, I found myself voting no. And I voted no. In terms of lessons learned, I voted no because I didn't think the case had been put strongly enough by the board to the members. And it felt as if part of the reason for that was because the issues hadn't been properly explored. And I'm thinking in terms of the relative risks and benefits of going down that road. And I know that some people have expressed concern about the position under company law here not being the same as it is in Germany, where there are protections even if you sell down to 51%, whereas I think in this country, and I'm no expert on company law, if you sell down below 75%, then there are certain things obviously that require a 75% vote that won't go through if minority shareholders, I think the phrase ganging up has been used to stop certain things going through. I never felt that issue was particularly well explored or explained, and I was online for the SGM about this, and I thought that when the question was put, and I think someone put it online, that it was treated rather dismissively. So in terms of lessons learned, you know, I'm standing for the board at the moment, but I'm one of those people who would have been inclined to vote in favour of that resolution, and I found myself voting against it in the end because I wasn't persuaded the homework had been done and that it had been properly explained to the members. That's my first point. My second point was just about the voting procedures for this meeting tonight, because I wasn't entirely clear about them from reading the material that was sent out. So the point that strikes me is, and I'm not a constitutional lawyer either, and I'm not an expert in the club's constitution, but if the general view was that the second vote on this was going to have to be an in-person vote, admittedly proxies were allowed, but was there any realistic prospects of getting over the voting threshold if the second vote was going to take take place subject to those rules?
I certainly hope so. It's quite a hypothetical question. Was there any chance we'd get 3,500 proxies that we needed, or people in this room to vote on the second vote? I feel like there was a decent chance. I would have loved to have had the vote structured in a different way to be able to get more people involved, and I hope that a future board that brings a future restricted action for the right reasons gets that opportunity.
Any thoughts on my first point?
Just the question in terms of the story, I think it's really tough, isn't it? Because the 50+1 conversation has been going on for a long time, and there was a big consultation done by Kevin and his team prior to me being on the board, and over time. So it was the end of quite a long journey already. But what I think that consultation didn't do, and Kev's not here to discuss it, or what they wasn't able to do, was engage loads of people so they felt they'd been part of that consultation process. So for a lot of people, it felt like the vote kind of dropped on them, not that they've been part of a long engagement, whereas for some of my board colleagues, they've been having this conversation with members for 5 years and more kind of thing, and for the guys involved in the bond, like it was, as they launched that, they were like, we're doing this today, but we need to sort out this stuff, kind of very quickly as well. So I feel like there is, loads of, as we've said already, there's loads to be learned from that whole process. And I think that, had more people felt and remembered that there'd been a consultation process, which is a kind of something in itself, then perhaps that would have changed the number, increased the number of votes, and changed enough votes for it to have passed.
Yeah, I think maybe there wasn't enough noise around the conversation that was going on previously, because it did feel as if, as you put it, it just dropped, and then we had a very short space of time to engage and debate and then vote.
I think one of the big lessons is we've got to, it's the people that didn't vote, and how do we engage those people in, kind of that's the biggest lesson for us, and the people that don't go on the online forums and on Twitter and Blue Sky and kind of like Reddit and Facebook and kind of aren't even online or are online but are in exist in different worlds. Kind of how we engage with different audiences in different places, and kind of how we the classic principle of any communication is go where the audience is. And so working out as a board, how do we go where the audience is, I think is is what I would recommend any future board do.
I would probably add that it probably did feel like it just suddenly drops on the new members who, that came in as of this new season, so that they're more less likely to feel haven't been involved in the consultation. So maybe going forward that may change. I don't know. It's a chance, but even so,
I think the great thing about this vote and the way it's happened now, kind of let's move on to positives, is that loads of people will have felt that they've been part of that conversation. So when it comes up again, it's a conversation that people have been part of and they can continue to engage with. So I think that, kind of this vote has been a really good forerunner for any potential vote that may or may not come along in that sense.
Yeah, my view is I'd be supportive of bringing it back once further discussions have been had and the groundwork's been done rather more thoroughly than it was already. I take your point about the discussion that's been going on. I suppose ultimately it came to a very quick end, that discussion. Right, let's have a vote. And there's other things that happened that come as a surprise. I don't recall a huge amount of discussion myself, but around bringing season ticket holders in as Don's Trust members, that seemed to happen in rather a hurry as well. So I'd just make these points in terms of lessons.
Yeah, that was something that's been talked about for a long time over our history, for a long, long time. Kind of, and similar to all this stuff, it's like, I guess with all these things, it's how much attention anyone is paying at the time, and how do we broaden the appeal for people to pay, kind of, and engage with that stuff over a longer period of time, so that, it doesn't feel like a surprise.
Thanks for all that.
Thank you. Any more? Jane's got the mic, Peter, so you'll be next.
Just on the accounts, so as Eric says, the PLC accounts landed earlier on this week. I'm not going to ask about the 400k because I realise that there's something going on with that. However, what I would like to know is the Dons Trust Board, when were they made aware of that issue, and what have they done as far as representing the majority owners in that?
I think it's going to be really difficult for us to talk about that in any detail at all.
So why is that the case? Because the difficulty is that by not communicating about it in advance, even to say you're going to spot that there's a 400k deficit here, it's made more attention of it. And I think in the current climate, even saying to the majority owners, there is something happening before that. Before the first notification we get as majority owners is when we see it, and then all rumours start, which could have been contained and held had you put out a statement, even like the one that has gone out afterwards. It's not even a statement, it's 2 lines that say we can't talk about this. I'm asking when the board were made aware of that issue.
I think,
and I don't think there's anything commercially about knowing when my representatives were made aware of that.
I don't want to. I want to answer that question and I want to answer it quickly, but I don't. Because of the other stuff that's going on, I don't know where the lines are in that. So can we come back to you very quickly with an answer to that? Because I don't want to kind of make a...
James, so I think I can answer this one fine. Because I was Dons Trust Board Chair. So the issue has been known about for over a year. It's been included in board papers on a regular basis, and the Dons Trust Board members all get access to those papers.
In the PLC board minutes?
Both. So it's in the PLC papers and minutes whenever the issue was discussed, and all of the Dons Trust Board members would have had access to those papers and had the opportunity to ask questions, as they always do with every topic that's raised. So PLC minutes go to the Dons Trust Board a week after the PLC meeting takes place, at the same time as all the PLC directors. So it then gives them a sort of 3-week period before the next board meeting.
And in its oversight role, the Dons Trust Board did or didn't have a conversation about this? Did?
Yeah.
Yes, we did.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Peter, you're up. The mic is coming, I promise. Here it is.
I thought one of the most relevant points made tonight was made by Eric when he asked about the playing budget and the academy, and that's even more relevant in a way, in that 50+1 having failed puts on the back burner the prospect of new investors and makes, I hope, the academy even more relevant. I'm just asking, you all looked at each other a bit unsure about what to say when Eric asked the question. What contact do you, as a board or as individuals, have with the academy people? Do you meet them? Do you know them? Do you have meetings when you ask what their needs are, what their frustrations are? Because it is important, particularly.
Probably not as much as we should have, from my perspective. We've been invited to the academy to spend time figuring out what they do and to understand them, and we see their reports, and now they report in, and we get all of those reports as part of our board papers from the PLC board.
You say you've been invited to go there. Have the board been there? Have they?
I haven't yet, no. It's on my very long list of things that I want to do.
Have any of the board? Do you all know the director of the academy well? Have you discussed with him his needs, frustrations?
I think, as with all the different aspects of this vast conglomerate that is AFC Wimbledon, so it's not just the academy, it's also the women's team, it's also the foundation, and of course the men's team.
But the academy is what the point Eric made about generating players. So they're the focal point of this club now. The academy, the foundation, with the greatest respect, is a peripheral aspect. The academy, we are a football club. We're here to produce footballers. As a fan zone club, we're more dependent than ever on producing our own players. So I sense you haven't perhaps given them the attention they merit.
No, I think I don't think that's right. I don't think that's right at all. It's a fair challenge that kind of the academy is absolutely central to our future. Kind of both on and off the pitch. The academy through Michael reports into Craig as director of football now. Craig reports to the PLC, and the PLC then reports to us. So that's the process. We have done what we've started doing is asking bits of the football club in an oversight capacity to come in and to our meetings. So kind of Mick comes into our meetings as chair. The women's board came into our meeting to give us an update on the women's team, and that's not to kind of circumpass. That's not a word. Circumvent the PLC, or to kind of bypass them. There you go. That's what I was trying to do. But it's to kind of to hear that kind of thing. Kind of to hear the kind of thing you've allowed to. And I think getting the academy, kind of team in with Craig is kind of would be a really useful thing. One of the things Angus and George alluded to about the new board coming in is doing a kind of one of the things I've proposed that we do an induction day, which precisely that, go and see the academy, kind of have a day here where various bits of the football club come in and talk to the new board about their priorities and about how they see the world. But it is really important that the core of that goes through the PLC, because they're the operational board of the club and we're there for oversight. So yes, it happens, and it happens through the structures that the football club has put in place to make them happen. I think one of the things I would love to see, and I think other people have talked about it as well, but I would really love to see is that we've got this fantastic list of players that we have sold out into the world of football, but I don't know it exists anywhere. And I think for members like us seeing like what our academy has produced, and we've all got the mental maths in our head of that, and some of that stuff we can't can't share because it's they're under contracts and there's transfers and stuff like that. But listing out, making aware to members like where all our players, where academy produced players are in the football. I know the academy's Twitter feed sometimes does that, but for me that would be really important and really would bring home, kind of continue to bring home the importance of the academy to everyone, because it is so fundamentally important.
Sorry, I was about to say before.
Sorry.
You answered it perfectly. No, the point I was going to make, apart from mentioning that the last ex-academy player I saw other than or ex-Wimbledon player other than Ali coming on for Ipswich yesterday was Joe Bursick, having a bit of a nightmare for Hibs at the weekend, but he's had some brilliant days as well. The point I was going to make is, yes, the academy, that's where we potentially get a lot of money from, of course, and you're absolutely right with that. But the foundation and the women's team and all the different bits of this club have their own role in not just advancing, in the case of the women's team, women's sport, which is a fine end in itself, but also it gets us a lot of new fans. That's what we need to capitalise on. That's why, not just because we want a women's team that gets into the championship, but because we want to get more fans that opens a door to. The foundation is a fine end in itself, but it also gets us an into the local communities that men's football on its own doesn't do. So that's why I would say that those are aspects that we should be keeping tabs on as much as with the academy, but they don't bring us the potential for millions of pounds. You're absolutely right with that. So yes, we need to reach out to all these different aspects of the club, and we need to keep on tabs on them. But it is quite clear that where it's a footballing matter, that's something that we have an oversight role on, and we don't have a management role on.
It's not a difficult thing to do. I'm sure you can go and watch the academy team play any time, stand on the touchline. The players are brilliantly helpful. They'll come up to you the players who aren't actually on the pitch will come up and very courteously ask you how they can help you. They're a fantastic bunch of young players, and it's quite easy to go down there and watch a game. You don't have to set up a formal meeting with the academy people. Just go down and watch some of the games.
Absolutely. And what's also in place, to a lesser extent, I think, than with some of the first team men's players, but what is also in place are these metrics for the community work that we expect and we ask the academy players to do, just as we ask the first team players to do, because we're one club and we want to portray all those aspects of the club within our work.
Yes, finally, where we agree is you touched on academy players generating the millions. With greatest respect, I admire DLAG, the foundation, Wish, all the other very important aspects of this club, but the foundation is really where our future lies, both financially and other ways.
Thank you, Peter. Any other questions from the room? There's a question online, I believe.
Yeah, Mark Hillier says, the account shows a significant increase in employee costs over the previous year. Why? Were these in the budget? Was the DTB aware of this? And what did you do to get the PLC to manage the variance?
Once again, these questions really are for the PLC AGM, but so I don't know how much we want to go into the details of them in this meeting. They're not really the purpose of this meeting. The costs have gone up for a variety of reasons, that much I know. Across the board, the costs have increased across every aspect of the running of the club in the last year. A proper and full answer can be got on December the 16th, and I encourage you all to come for that meeting, which will be directly after the Dons Trust AGM. Good. Any other questions? I think that means we might wrap it up. It's a record-breaking 8:05 p.m. Thank you, everyone, for coming out on a. It is Monday, isn't it? A Monday night to be with us tonight, and I hope you'll join us again at the next one. And of course, in the meantime, you'll see us online at the kiosk before every home game. You'll see our newsletters. You can find us on Pro Boards and on the platform formerly known as Twitter for the moment, and on Blue Sky now, and Threads, unbelievably, and on Reddit. We even did an all messages answered on Reddit. James did a couple of weeks ago, which really proves we're down with the kids. So well done for doing that, and thanks very much for turning out tonight. Bye-bye, everyone.
Instagram's next.